Hello there, welcome back to Nerd.World Films and a continuing story of the Friday the 13th series. This episode is part 2. Friday the 13th, part 2 that is. The first appearance, of course, of Jason Vorhees, but minus his legendary hockey mask. At this point, he was simply relying on a burlap sack to cover, we assume, his disfigured face, although this was something of the beginning of the trope of many serial killers wearing a mask. Of course, it was not the first one, as Michael Myers and a couple of other lower grade horror movies had done this as well. It became something of a horror staple right the way up to more modern series, and I realise how I'm showing my age by calling Scream a modern series of movies where they would wear a mask. This film would see the reappearance of the character survivor from the first movie, Alice, but she'll be in a very short scene at the beginning of the movie and be killed off pretty swiftly. This was mostly because the actress portraying her had a slight issue with a stalker around this time after the release of the first movie, which was only 1 year earlier. This had resulted in her being a little work shy, shall we say. She was uncomfortable being on set and wanted as little screen time as possible, and to this day has done very little work since. I don't believe appearing on screen, but only doing a little bit of voice work in the ensuing years, basically because of the actions of this individual who was eventually arrested and detained, but nonetheless it was a souring experience for the actress. As a result of this, the actress Adrienne King and her character Alice would be killed off very early on in her home by Jason after finding the decapitated head of Pamela Voorhees sitting in her fridge. Kinda gross, kinda makes you miss Zool. But it's at this point that we fast forward approximately 5 years. We find a group of new horny counselors going up to Camp Crystal Lake to Camp Blood to basically learn how to be camp counselors. They swap stories, they hear from the crazy locals from the first movie about how they're all gonna die, and yeah, they go up there and madness is going to ensue, as you can imagine. By this point, Jason has been living in the woods on his own, not bothered by anyone, just kind of wanting to do his own thing and chill out in the wilderness and not have horny teenagers ruining his camp experience. Now, there are several things that I personally question about this film. First of all, it's very rushed. The film is rushed in production. It rehashes a lot of the same tropes and ideas from the first movie, simply swapping out the main villain for Jason. And that's one of the things I also get stuck on. As much as Jason Voorhees is a greatly beloved character, his inclusion in this film doesn't really make a great deal of sense when you really think about it. And I'm not just talking because he's supernatural or anything else you want to think he might be. It's purely because Jason was dead in the first film, and that was what spurred on his mother to kill everyone. So why now is he alive and fully grown? He clearly loved his mother because he bothered to go recover her head after she was killed and build a shrine for it. No one said he's sane, but why not tell his mother he's alive? If he didn't drown, where's he been? There's a lot of things about this film that I question the logic of, but you've just got to accept it and roll with it because this is the first appearance of Jason Voorhees, and that's a good thing. Like in the other movie, he'll begin systematically killing off all the people that annoy him, basically this group of counselors, one by one, eliminating them, usually after some coitus has taken place. Because horny teenagers getting themselves killed in the woods. Again, I'm pretty sure there's messaging in this movie. Don't know what it is, but there's messaging. The cast does have some interesting characters, including one particular individual who's in a wheelchair who has this movie's epic death, which should be an award in and of itself, where he gets hit in the face with a machete and then his wheelchair will roll out the stairs. Not funny at all, it's dramatic, it's awful. Bottom line, Jason just wants to be left alone. He wants to spend his time hiding in the woods, doing nothing. We are again seen as our final girl in this movie is Ginny. another shy, bit more innocent individual. Again, like I say, this film just rehashes a lot of the same plot points and story beats from the first movie, just shaken up a little bit and then spurted back out onto a storyboard. She has heard the story of, you know, the councillors were all killed, the boy who drowned, everyone hears about it, but the burlap sack wearing serial killer, kind of a new addition to the story. And although she will survive, and obviously Jason will die for the not so many first possibly not even for the first time, no, he just, yeah, Jason Vorhees is a zombie, clearly. The film struggles to basically break away from the first film, which is something of a recurring theme in the Jason movies. They tend to, they're not overly complicated, let's face it, and there are some examples within the series of them shaking up the story a little bit. I'm not going to go too much into it in this video for this film because I don't think it does. The characters aren't even that dissimilar from the characters of the first film. You've got the same cliched stereotype characters. I'm not saying it's a bad film, it's not, it is a good film, but it's, because it was produced so quickly after the release of the first film to capitalize on the surprise success of the movie. Even though the main character wouldn't return, and we do see Betsy Palmer return briefly, mostly flashbacks, but the film doesn't differentiate itself a great deal from the first movie, which is one of its weaknesses. It's still a good film, it is still an entertaining film, and it's still easy to watch, and it's fun, very violent. It actually nearly received itself an X rating for the sheer amount of violence and gore in this movie, which can be excessive and got it cut down a little bit, although in recent years obviously sensibilities have changed a little bit. It's not as bad as it was probably originally considered in 1981. However, it in its day was considered a particularly violent movie. It is enjoyable, it is fun, but it does suffer the biggest problem of basically rehashing elements from the first film. But what it does well are those elements. It doesn't overthink it, it doesn't overcomplicate it. And again, you've got your beginning part, you get your establishment of where you are, you get resolution for the characters in the previous movie, you get the establishment of a new villain, that there's a mystery. Who's got Pamela Voorhees' head? Is this Jason? Then there's, moving on, introduction to all the new characters. Then you get their established position, place in the camp at the side of the lake. Once again, you begin to learn who they are, and then you slowly see them getting killed off, before eventually you get to the third act and final, which is the more resolution. You find bodies, you find everyone's dead, you're alone, you need help, and you've got to face off against what is the beginnings of the immortal serial killer Jason Voorhees. So yeah, not a complicated film, but it's still good, it's still enjoyable, and he's up there, it's top tier with the Friday the 13th movies in general. Albeit not a masterpiece, it is enjoyable. And that brings me swiftly to the conclusion of this video, where I'm going to score this film in my unique scoring system, if you're interested. I'm only going to give this film a 5 out of 6. I'm still high score. My feeling is this film suffers from basically being a rehash. Now, I actually don't have a big problem with rehashing plot beats from previous movies. I feel like one of the problems that the Predator films, for example, have had was they keep trying to introduce new story elements. Same with the Terminator films. But the Predator ones in particular, one of the things, as you may know from one of my previous videos, bother me kind of a lot is why they keep needing to change the Predators. They need to introduce new ideas. Like, the Predators aren't just there for sport hunting, they're there to collect DNA and test the species. It doesn't make any sense. And that's one of the problems that films have. They start to run out of ideas, and sometimes the original idea is not a bad one. Predator and Predator 2 did it right. You got obviously the first film, which isn't a perfect movie, and the second movie that is massively underestimated. Go back and watch it, you'll find it's a lot better than you think. But all they did is change the setting. They changed the Predator from the jungle to the city. Sometimes that's all you need, and that's something the Jason series kind of understands. People aren't there for high brow entertainment, they're not here for a Tom Hanks masterpiece. They're here for blood and carnage and violence. They're here to see teenagers getting hacked up while trying to run a camp at the side of the lake that no one has the good sense to burn down ever, except maybe in number 7. And yeah, this film, it suffers for replicating the elements of the first movie, but also it gains, it benefits, it takes the same ideas and makes them better, it makes them bigger, which is one of the things the film should do, rather than completely redesign its entire mythos and change everything, which doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but not always. So for me, a good 5 out of 6 for this film. And also, before we get into this full series, I may do an episode on this separately, but curious, what does everyone think Jason actually is? He's not exactly alive, is he? Because in so many of the films he seems to be dead. I mean, look what happens in Jason X. Is he alive? Is he dead? Is he human? Is he supernatural? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below what you actually think Jason Voorhees is. Is he a zombie? Is he just a human who's particularly resilient? Or is he some other form of supernatural entity?
I just want to take this moment to thank you for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, please check out my social links in the description box below to Instagram and Twitter and others, and also is down there a link to my Patreon page where you can support this channel and the others as I try to grow this franchise and do this more regularly. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and bye bye.